Hey everybody, Dean Hodgson here. Today we're going to tie Kelseys Hope. Kelseys Hope's a fly that I've used with great success on the island rivers for all of our species of salmon, as well as cutthroat and rainbow trout. And it's a very durable pattern, and so I want to share it with you. And today I think it's what, December the 6th or thereabouts. It's a rainy, stormy morning, and we're in Bruno's shop. And Bruno's got everything set up, built this great fly tying station, so I'm going to have no excuses today. Bruno's going to sit there and I'm going to talk to him and explain how I tie this fly as I demonstrate it for everybody. So, the hooks that that I tie this fly with, that I like it, is the Alex Jackson's spay hook. It's a 2055 is the number of the hook. This particular hook is in size 7. It produces a nice sized minnow pattern. I'll just dig one out here for you. The idea of this hook, the spay hooks, they slope down towards the back, so it exposes the body of the fly and it keeps the wing up high up off the body, and gives the trout or the fish a good view of the silver flash of the body. So we'll start by debarbing the hook. And we're going to stick her in the vise. So this is Bruno's Regal vise, and I haven't used it before, so I'm sure there'll be more than my normal fumbling around.
It's easy.
Yeah. Looks pretty good. Okay. So this particular fly, I took one out of my fly box this morning to show you. The basis of the fly is a silver body that is overwrapped with clear monofilament or fluorocarbon, which I use mostly fluorocarbon. A small.
Why the fluorocarbon?
It's just clear. It absorbs water. It really allows the silver mylar underneath to shine through. Okay. And then you tie your materials on very sparsely. A sparse wing of green bucktail, and then a couple of strips of crystal flash, and then a blue wing over top of it.
Okay.
And I call it coho blue. It's medium dark blue. At any rate, the reason I used bucktail as opposed to polar bear hair is that bucktail will stay cocked
up at an angle, sort of thing.
Up on an angle above the body of the fly, and it won't lay down. When polar bear gets soft and wet, it will lay down onto the body of your fly.
Okay.
And it creates obviously a minnow pattern along the edge of the body. But the idea of this fly is to expose that body without the wing, as opposed to having the wing parted. So we'll get on with the tying here. So the first thing we'll start with is the thread that I used to start with to tie on the monofilm or the fluorocarbon is 3/0 wax nylon thread. So we'll just start that in.
So you started
Right up where the hook folds together. And just run a bit of tying thread right down to where it starts to bend around the hook. So, okay, that background is a little bit bright for seeing where I am. And that's about right as it starts down the back side. And then you can spin your thread a bit, flatten it out. And then you want to run your thread just the loops right up to where the fold of the shank, or the fold of the eye is, where that
Yeah.
material folds back. And at that point, you're going to tie in your
What weight of fluorocarbon you put in?
fluorocarbon. I use 20-pound test.
Okay.
So
Does it matter that much, or?
it seems to me, I've experimented with 10 and with 12 and all different sizes, and I've even used 30, but 20-pound to me creates the right sized body of the
Okay.
fly that I want, that I
Yeah.
see that
Yeah.
pleases me. So tie it in, and then you're gonna cinch it down quite firmly all the way down the shank, right up to where your thread ended at the bend of the hook.
You really cinch it down then.
Yeah, cinch it down quite firmly. That's why I use 3/0
3/0 thread.
thread, and waxed. It really locks it into place.
Got it.
So there you have your thread tied in with your line. So now we're going to take our mylar, and mylar is double-sided. There's this particular spool is anyway. It has gold on one side and silver on the other. So you'll tie it in with the gold facing towards you. You want a silver body. If you want a gold body, it's the opposite way. Tie it in. And then you're going to run your thread
All the way up, eh?
all the way back up. And leave yourself a good amount of room to tie in the head, so when
Okay.
you're going to tie in your float. So now we're going to just wrap our mylar forward.
You were showing me the trick with your bobbin there last time. Well, with your the
Oh,
spool.
for tying. When I'm, rather than cutting off a chunk of material and ending up with 2 inches of short stuff that I can't use,
Yeah.
Nigel, you'll appreciate this one. Like, yeah, just run some off of the spool, lock it into place in a little slot on the side of your
And you thread
spool,
it through the hole.
run it back up through the hole, and then it'll sit there and it won't unravel and run down to the floor.
Good idea.
So I want to make sure this gets started right, so I'll roll it over.
Do you stretch it a bit?
You put enough pressure on it so that it doesn't have too many folds, and it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because the fluorocarbon going over the top of it is going to
Hide some?
bind it down. Now I've lost my tension and I lost my spin, so just have to wind it back up the shank here as best you can without too many folds in it. Okay, now I'm going to turn that back around. I will admit that by cutting a chunk off, it's a lot easier to roll up, or guys who use your rotary vices
Find it easier.
spin it forward. Maybe it's a little easier for you, but I've never gotten into the habit of using the rotary aspect of the vise, so I still tie like I did when I was learning when I was 10 years old or 8 years old, I guess.
Thompson Model A.
Yeah. Okay, so I got a few little bumps and not perfect wraps, but we'll try to cover that off with the fluorocarbon. So now, just moisten my hands a little bit dry here, and then I get started properly here at the back. And I put a pretty good amount of pressure on there, because I don't want this unraveling. And the idea is to lay your monofilament cheek to cheek as you go up here. So you want to every fold right next against the other. And it does take a little bit to do this. So bear with me as I do my journey up the hook shank.
You're creating for performance, not quantity.
Well, that's true. You don't produce a lot of flies in a hurry, but this,
Well tied.
yeah. As a matter of fact, Cam and I were fishing on the puntage this year, and I got about a 12 or 15 pound spring, just a rocket, but it was colored. It wasn't a real bright fish, but it was strong and had the hook jammed in his lower jaw there. And I got in and we beached the fish, and then went to take the hook out of the fish.
Yeah.
The shank of the hook had actually broken. Was broken in half, and I should have brought the fly. It would have been a good one to show. It was actually broken in half, and the fluorocarbon wraps from having it down the shank and then wrapped over top of it was strong enough to fight that spring and bring it in with a broken hook. So they're a very durable fly. And of course the fluorocarbon protects the mylar from being shredded by their teeth.
Does it add more bling too?
It magnifies the effect of the silver.
Yeah.
So it really makes it pop, yes. All right, so when you get your line up to the head, you want to keep your top wraps, you want to keep them,
Just a little bit back, eh?
well, yeah, a little bit back, but also you want to keep them perpendicular, like at 90 degrees to your hook shank,
Okay.
so that you get a nice bed to lay your wing against, so
got
that it's straight. If you tie off on the top, you're going to find that this line will want to run ahead on you, and then you have a very uneven surface to tie on at the front. So bring it up to where you're going to start your head,
And then tie it underneath.
and then you're going to tie it underneath as opposed to over top like we tie most of our materials off. So, and then you're going to give it some pretty good wraps, because you do not want this to undo.
Don't want to lose that spring.
Well, you don't want, yeah, you don't want it all unwinding on you. So you get it wrapped on good and tight. Now we're going to trim that. And it's heavier line, so you're going to want to use a heavier scissor to nip off the line. Okay, see, I got a tag into silver there. Now that we have that solidly tied into place, I'm going to whip finish this thread, and I'm going to change over to a black 70 denier. Ultra thread to tie the head, because the head is black. I tie them in green. Chartreuse green thread for the head. I find that is probably more effective for taking springs. The green.
You're kidding.
No,
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way it worked out, but mostly I like black because black is good for coho, and this is my absolute favorite coho fly. So the wing material is bucktail, just right off of bucktail, and it's dyed, so it's like a I don't know what color green you'd call it.
Slime.
Kelly green, or no, it's not slime. It's good and green. So, but you're going to you'll see the bucktail hair really thins out at the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim this off the tail, and this would be good if you're tying a bucktail for out in the ocean where you want that nice tapered tail off the end. But on this particular fly, the tail is going to end right at about the back end of the hook, not way out over the end. So you're going to want a bit of definition at the end. So I want my tail a little thicker at the end so that that body shows up. So what we'll do is we're going to clip it off, and then we're going to stack this hair. So we just take it, trim it right off the tail, get our hair stacker, see if we can finagle it in there. Oops, there's a string. Give her a little tap here. So now, even though it's thin, we have a little more definition at the end. So put it in place, measure it in your right hand, and hold it up over your shank. So you want your
butt ends to be right at the...
Yeah, just at the back, or maybe just past, but right at the back. And then you'll transfer it to your left hand, and then you're going to nip it off so that when you tie it in, it's the length you want it to be. And cardinal sin of not starting your thread before, this is where it becomes, you have to be inventive. So you take your new thread that you didn't tie on, well, you hold your material tightly in your left hand.
Talk about skill.
Well, the only reason I showed you that, Bruno, is I know you're bad for doing that, so I wanted to show you how to get around that particular little problem. Then you lock her in on top, get it right in place, and don't let it roll around the shank. You want it right dead on the top, straight up and down. And here, as I was demonstrating that, whoops, that's perfect, right there. That's where we're going to want it. So we're going to just spend some time making sure that is really locked into place. Because these flies, the only thing that breaks down on them is the wing from the teeth pulling at them. So you want to make sure that you're locked in really well at the top.
Yeah.
The next thing you're going to do is take a little bit of crystal flash. Just even the ends up on one single strand. Lay them over top of that wing down to the back of the hook, right with that in. lock it right on top. Give it a couple, 3 wraps to make sure it stays right on top and doesn't roll around your shank. Fold it over, go over those strands again, extend out the back and trim it right at the end of your wing. The over wing is the blue bucktail hair, and I call it coho blue. I've had it for years, and it just seems to be the right color. So then I'll take again about the same amount of material. I'm not sure how important it is that you end up with exactly the same amount of material. You get close is good. If you had more blue, I don't think it would matter too much. These strands are quite long for when you put them in your stacker, and they tend to want to flop around in there, so you can take it and just trim off 1 inch or 2 inches to get something down so it's a little more manageable.
And the K-tail patty stacker.
And you just put it in your stacker, get it sort of spread out so that the electrical charge is not too tight, and then give it a tap. So when you remove hair from your stacker, usually what you'll do is pull it apart and take it out from the bottom. Like, you'll pull it apart, you'll have your wing material at the bottom. Take it out with your left hand, and you always have it pointed the way you want the material laying on the vise. So if you're going to tie a set of wings on, you would have had it pointed the other way. So this way it comes out of the stacker pointed in the right direction, and you don't have to fumble around with it. The blue, I put it on there and right at about exactly where the green ends. If it's a little bit longer, that's fine, but I try to have it pretty much in the same spot. This, again, we want directly over the top of the shank. A couple of soft wraps. Don't let it go, make sure it stays in place. And there it is, the overwing. Oops. I keep trying to turn it like I turn my vise, and that doesn't work. You want to build a pretty good head on there now, and you want to cinch these materials down. So, of course, your cinching pulls are the first ones you do. So when you got your hair set there first, you have a couple of soft ones, but then you want to really tighten up without breaking your thread.
Never done that.
Yeah. So then you got a nice, neat little head on there. And then we'll finish the fly. I guess as you're putting these wings in, and as you're putting the fluorocarbon body material wrapped on, I'm sure you could use some type of adhesive or glue.
You don't do that?
I don't glue any of my flies. I
just put a double whip finish then?
I double or triple whip finish them, and these I triple whip finish them because sometimes they get a tooth into that thread, but I just don't like putting glue on my flies. My dad used to say that if a steelhead can find a river that he was born in with his nose to come back and spawn, he can smell the glue on the end of my fly. So, and whether it's true or not, I know a lot of people use glue. At any rate, there you go. If you want to use glue, go ahead and use it. I don't. I choose not to use it. It's this is my absolute go-to. Just about the only pattern I fish for our salmon that are coming into the river, springs, chums, coho, and it's a tremendous minnow pattern. I've fished it with great success in the ocean for coho, so it's a good saltwater fly as well as freshwater. So there you have it, Kelsey's Hope.